Hey everybody, welcome back to the Consumer Warrior Podcast. The podcast is dedicated to helping you with your big debt problems. If you're just dabbling in debt, this isn't the podcast for you. We deal with the big debt problems like repossession, debt collection lawsuits, foreclosure, bankruptcy, and all those other horrible financial problems. We're here to help you to help yourself. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, John Skiba, and I am a consumer protection attorney in the state of Arizona. I'm also a certified Ramsey Solutions Master Financial Coach. I help people to get out of debt and to stay that way for the long haul. And on today's episode, I want to talk about the differences between dealing with your debt problem through a Chapter 13 bankruptcy as opposed to dealing with it through the Dave Ramsey approach of a debt snowball, where you're just paying the debts off quickly, relatively quickly, but paying them off over time. And what I really want to do is kind of dive deep into the kind of pros and cons of both of those and help you make a decision whether one is going to be better for you as opposed to the other. And so I thought what we could do is start off by talking about a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, what it is, and kind of pros and cons of it. Now, in consumer bankruptcy, that most individuals file. Overwhelmingly, most people file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Chapter 7 is a relatively short process, takes about 4 to 5 months to process, and it's a complete discharge. It eliminates all of your unsecured debts for the most part, and it's also what we call liquidating bankruptcy, meaning if you have assets that are not protected under the exemption laws in your state, then the court can seize assets, sell them, and give the money to your creditors. Now, the flip side of this is a Chapter 13. Chapter 13s are fairly common, not as common as a Chapter 7, but a lot of people file Chapter 13s. One of the big reasons is because back in 2005, they changed the bankruptcy code, and if you make more than a family of your size in your state, then they often require you to file a Chapter 13. Now, Chapter 13 bankruptcy is a fairly long process. It's usually 5 years. It can be as short as 36 months, but most of the cases that we see are 5 years long. And what they require you to do is to put together a plan that will be proposed to your creditors where you are going to pay a certain dollar amount each month, and then that money will be distributed out to your creditors. You will do that for a 60-month period, and then at the end of 60 months, any balance owed to your unsecured creditors, things like credit cards, medical bills, those types of things, any balance owed after the 5 years will be eliminated or discharged through the bankruptcy. It doesn't discharge your mortgage, doesn't discharge car payments and all that. You still have to continue to make payments on secured debts. But it's a way to deal with a lot of unsecured type debts. And the reason why a lot of people do this is, one, like I said, if they don't qualify for a Chapter 7, but two, it forces your creditors to work with you. If you've ever tried to settle debts and try to get everybody on board, particularly if you have a lot of debt, a lot of credit cards, sometimes it can be difficult to get everybody in agreement to accept some sort of settlement. I often say if you have 10 different credit cards and 5 agree to work with you and 5 don't, you're kind of in this tough spot where, it's tough to do a settlement if not everybody's on board. Well, with the Chapter 13 bankruptcy, it forces all the creditors to work with you. Not only that, but as soon as you file the Chapter 13, your creditors are barred from trying to continue to try to collect on the debt. So there's this thing called the automatic stay that comes in place, and your creditors can no longer call you, sue you, garnish you, all that kind of stuff. So the mechanics of it are you and typically you're a bankruptcy attorney are going to put together a plan that's going to be proposed to the creditors, and assuming that there's no objections, or if there are objections that you resolve them, you're going to be paying a set dollar amount to your creditors over a 5-year period. How that dollar amount is calculated can be a little bit complicated, but in general what they require is that you pay your disposable income to your creditors for a 5-year period. So they look at your budget, look at your income, look at your monthly expenses. If you're not paying your debts, how much money is left over at the end of the month. And typically, whether that debt is $5 or $5,000, that's what you're going to be paying to your creditors. It is a set payment. It's something that's also fluid, though. So if you get a job that's better paying 3 years into your Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you're going to have to increase the amount of money that you're paying to your creditors through the case. So you compared the Chapter 13 to the Dave Ramsey approach, where you're putting together a debt snowball. Now, if you're not familiar with this, the debt snowball is you put out you line up all your debts, you list them out, usually smallest to largest, and then you start just hammering away, trying to take care of the smallest debt, and then once that's paid for, you take what you would have been paying on that smaller debt, apply it to the next largest debt, and so on, so that eventually you're paying more and more to each of the subsequent debts as you settle the smaller ones. And in theory, this will allow things to be paid off very quickly if you're disciplined in getting it done that way. The benefit to the debt snowball opposed to the Chapter 13 bankruptcy, one is you're not in bankruptcy. You're not going to have to say that you filed bankruptcy on lending applications and things like that down the road. Two, you don't have anybody really looking over your shoulder like you do in the bankruptcy court. The bankruptcy court has the benefit of having that powerful tool, the automatic stay, of stopping your creditors from doing any kind of collections against you. The trade-off is you've got this person known as the United States trustee looking over your shoulder. This Chapter 13 trustee is going to be monitoring things like your tax returns when you file those. You have to provide a copy to the trustee. Like I said, if your income goes up or if it goes down, they may adjust your monthly plan payment. So there are a lot of different things that, as far as you're in this system that has some benefits to it, but it also has some big downside in that you're in this active case for 5 years and you've got someone looking over your shoulder a bit, seeing exactly where your money's going. Not only that, you can't sell things or buy things without the court being involved. And I'm talking big things, like cars and homes and things like that. You have to get court approval to do all that. You have to get court approval to incur new debt. So there's that component of it where you have the power of the court, but you also have the involvement of the court. You've got an active court case for 5 years, which can be difficult to live with. And because of that, Chapter 13 cases have a historically low success rate. Nationwide, it's about the last study I saw showed about 35 to 37% success rate as far as cases that were actively, that went the entire 5 years and were successfully discharged. So the benefit to the snowball and the Dave Ramsey approach is that you are not having that oversight. You're not having this person in your life, this Chapter 13 person in your life, and having to worry about any adjustments in income or any type of needing to sell assets, needing to purchase things, and having to get court approval for it. The downside is to the debt snowball is that your creditors are not forced to work with you through this process. You could approach them, and particularly if you're asking to settle the claim, if you're wanting to pay less than the full amount owed, they can say no. That's something that's totally negotiated between you and your creditors. So you don't have the power of the court, but then you also don't have the court meddling in your life. It's as far as their involvement. So, as far as which is best for your situation, I can tell you Chapter 13 is ideal for people that are facing some type of financial crisis. If you're in a situation where your house is about to be foreclosed on, then you may have to file a Chapter 13 to stop that foreclosure, and then you'll have 5 years to get caught up on your mortgage payments. I see this quite a bit in my law practice where someone comes in and says, hey, I've been trying to work things out, or the alternative is I've been ignoring this completely, but they're going to foreclose on my house in 2 weeks or next week or tomorrow. We get that one sometimes. And if you're in that situation, a Chapter 13 is powerful and that can stop the foreclosure sale and allow you to force them to come to the table to get things caught up. But if you're not in a financial crisis situation and you're communicating with your creditors, you could work out something through the debt snowball and get things paid off very quickly without having the court involvement. The only downside to that is that you're going to be paying typically more than you would in a Chapter 13. Chapter 13, most cases pay anywhere from 5 to 20 cents on the dollar. Could be higher. I mean, it varies from case to case, but generally you're not paying anything close to the full amount. Whereas if you're reaching out and trying to settle it or doing a debt snowball, you could end up paying something close to the full amount, which makes the process a little longer, But at the end of the day, I mean, they're debts that you incurred, and you're obligated to pay them. So those are kind of the pros and cons of the Chapter 13 as opposed to the debt snowball. The Chapter 13 is fairly complicated, and it typically does require an attorney to do it. I can tell you that the success rate, at least here in Arizona where I practice, is one Chapter 13 trustee told a group of us they had never seen a person representing themselves successfully complete a Chapter 13, just because there are a lot of moving parts to it. So if you're going that route, you're looking at hiring an attorney to be successful at it. And most attorneys' fees in Chapter 13 cases are regulated by the court. Here in 2018 in Arizona, Chapter 13 cases typically cost $4,500 plus another $300 some odd dollars for filing fees to the court. So there's some expense involved there. The flip side is usually as far as like the debt snowball, I help people with financial coaching. That's why I got my certification as a Ramsey financial coach, to be able to help people to put together a plan to be able to deal with their debt problems without having to go through that process if it's not necessary. So if you want to learn more about my financial coaching practice or more about the Chapter 13 process, you can head on over to my website. The web address is debtfree.coach. We'll put it there on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube, but debtfree.coach. That's the actual website, www.debtfree.coach. Now, with all that being said, that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. I appreciate you listening in. For those of you who are listening on iTunes or Stitcher, I do have a YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube, just put in my name, John Skiba. It's Skiba, or you can put in the search box the Consumer Warrior Project. You will come up with this page, and we have hundreds of videos on here. It kind of gives you some behind the scenes on the podcast a bit. So that's going to do it for this episode, and I will catch you next time.